A Viking longship cuts through the North Atlantic mist, its dragon head prow aimed at an unknown continent. We have long celebrated their single confirmed camp in Newfoundland, but that was just the beginning. The true story of the Norse in North America is a sprawling mystery of 24 other lost settlements, hidden in plain sight from the Canadian Arctic to the American Midwest. By the end of this journey, you will know the evidence and the enduring enigmas of 25 sites that could rewrite everything we thought we knew. What happened to those bold explorers who ventured so far from home? And why did their footholds on a new world vanish so completely? What forgotten story is still waiting to be uncovered? The one solid piece of this puzzle was unearthed on the northernmost tip of Newfoundland. In the 1960s, Norwegian explorers Helge and Anne Stein Ingstad followed a trail of clues, both from the ancient sagas and local fishermen's tales. They were led to a small, windswept cove called Elance Ox Meadows. There, beneath the unassuming mounds of earth, they found the undeniable footprint of a Viking presence. This was not a random collection of artifacts, but an entire Norse settlement, complete with the remains of sturdy turf-walled longhouses and a smithy where bog iron was worked into nails. The discovery was a thunderclap in the world of archaeology, providing the first and only concrete proof that Norse feet had walked and Norse hands had built in the Americas centuries before Columbus. Elance Ox Meadows is identified as the Stromfjord of the sagas, a bustling gateway to the fabled land they called Vinland. Yet it was never intended to be a permanent colony filled with farms and families. Think of it instead as a sprawling base camp, a workshop, and a winter haven for ships returning from expeditions farther south. This was a hub of activity, a place to repair vessels, process timber, and gather supplies for the long journey back to Greenland. Its very existence as a gateway proves that the Norse exploration did not stop at that single cove. It was the operational center for a much wider, more ambitious push into a new continent. If this was the home base, then where are all the other camps, the outposts, the smaller stations the sagas hint at? The search for those lost sites begins right here, at the one place we know for certain they stood. But the trail of the Vikings did not end at Elance Ox Meadows. Decades after that monumental discovery, a new clue emerged from an unexpected source high above the earth. In 2016, archaeologists turned to the skies, using satellite imagery to scan the coast of southwestern Newfoundland. They were searching for patterns in the vegetation, subtle signs that might betray the presence of ancient ruins hidden just beneath the soil. Their technology pinpointed a promising location at a place called Point Rosee. From orbit, the land itself seemed to tell a story of straight lines and right angles, forms that nature rarely makes on its own. This was the first hint of a secret sleeping for 1,000 years. The team then brought in ground-penetrating radar, a device that peers into the earth without a single shovel being lifted. The radar revealed something startling, a series of anomalous shapes and magnetic readings deep underground. The data suggested the outline of a large, turf-walled structure, and most compellingly, a hearth where intense fires had once burned. The evidence pointed toward a potential Norse outpost far south of their known base. Excavation began, and soon the team uncovered what they believed was the smoking gun, evidence of bog iron processing. This was not just any fire. The Vikings had a very specific way of extracting iron from the peculiar, iron-rich soil found in bogs. They would roast the bog ore in a stone-lined pit to drive out impurities, leaving behind a spongy mass of metal called bloom. The signs of this exact, sophisticated process were found at Point Rosee. It seemed the headlines were right. A second Viking settlement had been found. Yet, in archaeology, every discovery is a hypothesis waiting to be tested. Soon, a wave of skepticism arose from other experts in the field. Could these turf walls have been formed by natural processes, perhaps by a long-vanished stream or by tree roots? Was the evidence of iron working truly conclusive, or could it have been left by later indigenous peoples or even early European fishermen? The initial excitement was met with cautious debate, turning a seeming triumph into a perfect example of the scientific process in action. The story of Point Rosee is not one of a simple yes or no. It is a window into the ongoing detective work that defines the search for the lost Norse. It shows how a single clue can ignite a firestorm of questions, pushing researchers to look deeper and demand more proof. This is the reality of the hunt, a careful dance between groundbreaking discovery and rigorous doubt, where every potential site must earn its place in history. Far to the south of the debate at Point Rosee, the coastline of Nova Scotia holds its own silent riddles built in stone. Scattered along the foggy shores are peculiar structures, including a mysterious rune-covered slab discovered near Yarmouth. This stone, covered in markings that some believe resemble Norse runes, has sparked imaginations for over a century. Could it be a message left by a lost Viking explorer, a territorial claim carved for posterity? Alongside it stand strange, ancient stone towers that rise from the earth like weathered sentinels. The most compelling theory suggests these were Norse navigational markers, built high on headlands to guide their longships through treacherous, unfamiliar waters. They might have also functioned as ritual burial cairns or the fortified remains of small, seasonal outposts, offering shelter and a vantage point for a people who always kept one eye on the sea. This vision of a Viking foothold in the Maritimes is a powerful one, suggesting a presence that was more than just a fleeting visit. Yet mainstream archaeology urges a heavy dose of caution. Most experts point to a far more recent origin for these towers, linking them to the hard work of later colonial farmers who cleared their land of stone, piling it into walls and odd structures that only seem ancient to our modern eyes. The Yarmouth stone's markings, they argue, are likely the result of natural glacial scraping or the mundane work of 19th century quarrymen, not the careful hand of a Norse scribe. This fundamental disagreement is the very engine of the mystery. It pits romantic possibility against sober analysis, leaving us to wonder if we are looking at the forgotten landmarks of a lost civilization or simply seeing patterns where none exist. The stones themselves offer no easy answers, standing mute as the theories swirl around them. Rising from a quiet park in Newport, Rhode Island, a mysterious stone tower stands as a monument to one of history's greatest riddles. Its circular form, supported by 8 graceful arches, is built from rough, uncoursed stone, a design that feels both ancient and entirely out of place in its New England setting. For those who believe it is a Norse relic, its architecture is the most compelling clue. They point across the Atlantic to the round churches scattered across Scandinavia, structures like the one in Orfear, Scotland, which share the same circular footprint and sturdy, defensive masonry. This tower, they argue, was not a church but a navigational aid, a celestial observatory, or a fortified baptistry for a lost Viking colony. Proponents meticulously chart how its windows and archways align with the solstice sun and certain stars, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of the heavens that they attribute to Norse explorers. Faint, weathered markings on its stones are interpreted as runic inscriptions, cryptic messages from a forgotten past. Yet for every piece of evidence presented, a powerful counter-argument emerges. Radiocarbon dating of mortar samples points decisively to the 17th century, a full 600 years after the Vikings of the sagas. Historical records show that Benedict Arnold, the first colonial governor of Rhode Island and not the famous traitor, owned the land and referred to the structure as his stone-built windmill in his will. Skeptics argue the architectural similarities are coincidental, a case of convergent design rather than a transatlantic connection. The so-called runes are likely natural weathering or the random marks of later quarrymen. So the tower remains an enigma, a stone paradox. Is it the weathered skeleton of a Viking outpost, a silent witness to a chapter of history we have yet to fully accept? Or is it simply the charming ruin of a colonial mill, its true story amplified by centuries of hopeful speculation? The debate itself proves how a single structure can hold two completely different histories within its walls, and why this tower continues to captivate anyone who seeks a tangible link to a world beyond the sagas. Deep in the heart of America's Midwest, a farmer named Olaf Oman was clearing trees on his land in 1898 when his plow struck a flat, gray slab of stone. Tangled in the roots of a poplar tree, the stone was covered in strange, angular markings. Oman had stumbled upon what would become the most controversial artifact in North American history, the Kensington runestone. Its inscription, carved in a form of ancient Norse lettering, told a harrowing story. It spoke of 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland far to the west. The message was a desperate one, dated to the year 1362, detailing an attack that left 10 men dead and bloodied. It ended with a plea for rescue. If this stone was genuine, it meant Norse explorers had ventured over 2,000 miles inland from the Atlantic coast, a full 130 years after the Viking Age was supposed to have ended. The implications were staggering, suggesting a reach into the continent that historians had never dreamed possible. The immediate reaction from the academic world was a wall of disbelief and accusations of an elaborate hoax. Experts pointed to the runes themselves, arguing they were a jumbled mix from different time periods and contained modern grammatical elements. The story, they said, was simply too perfect, a romantic tale fabricated by a Swedish immigrant longing for a connection to a glorious past. Olaf Oman and his neighbor were tried in the court of public opinion, accused of carving the stone themselves. The case seemed closed for decades, a curious footnote in the history of American forgeries. Yet the stone refused to fade into obscurity. A persistent group of researchers kept the investigation alive, and modern science began to offer new tools to re-examine the evidence. Geological analysis of the weathering in the carved inscriptions revealed a deep, aged patina, suggesting the grooves were centuries old, not freshly cut in the 1890s. The specific type of sandstone was traced to a local Minnesota quarry, but the process of how it was inscribed and aged remained a complex puzzle. The debate over the Kensington runestone is a perfect microcosm of the entire search for lost Viking settlements. It pits the thrilling possibility of a rewritten history against the rigorous demands of scientific proof. It forces us to ask, what if one determined farmer actually did unearth the truth? And if this stone is a fake, why does its story feel so compelling, a ghost of a narrative that refuses to be silenced? North of the debate in Minnesota, another sensational discovery would soon test the limits of belief. In the early 1930s, a prospector named James Dodd emerged from the wilderness near Beardmore, Ontario, with an astonishing claim. He had found, he said, a cache of ancient Norse weapons buried near his claim, a rusted sword, an axe head, and what was believed to be a piece of a shield. The artifacts were spectacular, the kind of relics you would expect to find in a Scandinavian burial mound, not in the Canadian bush. The prestigious Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto authenticated the find, and the Beardmore relics became an instant sensation, seeming to prove that Viking explorers had trekked deep into the heart of the continent. For a few brief years, the story was accepted as fact, a dramatic new chapter in the story of North American exploration. But the truth, as it so often does in these tales, was far more complicated. Skeptics soon began to pick apart James Dodd's story. The details of the discovery kept changing, and a much more plausible explanation surfaced. Dodd had once lived in Norway and had worked for a man who owned a collection of exactly this type of Viking artifact. The evidence began to point overwhelmingly toward a hoax. The relics were likely authentic Viking pieces, but they had been smuggled from Norway and deliberately planted in Ontario to create a fabricated history. The museum was forced into a humiliating retreat, and the Beardmore relics became a textbook example of an archaeological forgery. This episode serves as a vital cautionary tale in the search for the lost Norse. It highlights the immense pressure to find that next great clue and the powerful desire to connect the dots, even when they do not quite fit. It reminds us that for every genuine mystery, there may be a clever deception waiting to be exposed, and that the scientific process, with its demands for provenance and peer review, is our most essential tool for separating romantic fiction from historical fact. Further south, the sheltered waters of the Gulf of St. Lawrence offered a very different kind of promise for Norse explorers. Imagine leaving the open Atlantic behind and entering a vast, inland sea teeming with life and protected from the worst ocean storms. Along the forested coasts of what we now call New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island, subtle clues hint at a fleeting presence. Local lore and some archaeological surveys have pointed to unusual, large stones with perfectly carved holes found near the water's edge. To a Norse sailor, such a stone would be a mooring stone, a permanent anchor point to securely tie up their longships. Finding one of these would be like finding a parking spot carved out 1,000 years ago, a clear sign that someone intended to return. Deep in the Acadian forests, other anomalous finds, like potential Norse-style iron rivets and tools that do not match known indigenous technologies, have occasionally surfaced. These are not the remains of a village, but rather scattered pieces of a puzzle, suggesting brief landings, temporary camps, or perhaps even a small, failed attempt to establish a foothold in this rich new land. Out in the center of the Gulf, the windswept Magdalen Islands would have been an irresistible magnet for any Norse captain. This small archipelago sits directly in the path of the natural sea highway leading into the heart of the continent. For ships battered by Atlantic gales, these islands offered a perfect, sheltered harbor to make essential repairs. But their real treasure was not just safe anchorage, it was the massive walrus herds that crowded their beaches. For the Norse, walrus ivory was a form of currency, a luxury good that was worth a fortune back in Europe. A single, well-established hunting camp on these islands could have funded years of further exploration. The strategic logic is overwhelming, a perfect combination of a safe haven on a vital route and an incredibly valuable, renewable resource. While conclusive proof of a Norse camp here remains elusive, the Magdalen Islands stand as one of the most logically sound locations for a lost settlement, a place where practical need and economic ambition would have drawn them like a beacon. The journey inland presents the most radical possibility of all, that Norse explorers navigated the vast freshwater seas of North America. 3 enigmatic sites around the Great Lakes form a tantalizing, if fiercely contested, trail. Far out in the cold, deep waters of Lake Superior lies Isle Royale, a place shrouded in ancient mystery. For thousands of years, long before the Vikings, indigenous peoples quarried the pure copper found there. The puzzling part is the sheer scale of the prehistoric mining, and the fact that this high-quality copper suddenly stops appearing in the archaeological record of North America around 3,000 years ago. Where did it all go? One audacious theory suggests that Norse explorers, drawn by tales of a metal-rich land, reached Isle Royale and tapped into these mines, shipping the valuable copper back to Greenland and Europe. While no definitive Norse artifacts have been found on the island, the sheer volume of missing copper and the island's strategic location have fueled a century of speculation. Were the Vikings the ones who carried this prized metal away? Scattered along the shores of the Great Lakes from Minnesota to Ontario, you can find strange stones with perfectly cylindrical holes bored through them. To the untrained eye, they look like natural oddities, but to those who believe in a Norse inland voyage, these are mooring stones. The theory is simple and practical. A Viking ship, unable to drop anchor in deep water, would be tied to a heavy stone onshore. The ship's rope would be threaded through the hole, allowing the crew to pull their vessel in or let it out with the changing water level. Finding such a stone is like finding a 1,000-year-old dock cleat. Skeptics, however, point to natural geological processes. They argue that these holes are often formed by swirling water and sand, or by the relentless grinding of pebbles driven by waves, a phenomenon known as pothole erosion. The debate over each individual stone is a microcosm of the larger search. Is it a carefully crafted tool from a lost expedition? Or are we seeing a familiar pattern in a random act of nature, our minds connecting dots that were never meant to be connected? The most direct and controversial claim of an inland journey comes not from the lakes themselves, but from the coast of Maine. In 1971, a man named Walter Elliott stumbled upon 3 strange stones in a salt marsh near Spirit Pond. The stones were covered in what appeared to be runic inscriptions and a crude map. The script was difficult to decipher, but some researchers believe it tells a story of exploration, hardship, and even charts a route from the Atlantic coast all the way to the Great Lakes. If authentic, the Spirit Pond runestones would be a bombshell, a first-hand account of a Norse push into the heart of the continent. The academic establishment, however, has largely dismissed them as an elaborate hoax. Experts in Old Norse language point to numerous grammatical errors and a strange mix of runic alphabets that would be highly anachronistic for a genuine Viking Age artifact. They argue the map is a fanciful creation, its landmarks unrecognizable to anyone actually navigating the region. The debate is as polarized as it gets. For believers, the stones are undeniable proof, their very existence a challenge to the historical record. For skeptics, they are a classic example of a modern forgery, perhaps created by a local farmer with a knowledge of runes and a vivid imagination. The stones sit in this unresolved space, a trio of silent witnesses that either hold the key to a lost history or stand as a monument to our enduring desire to find Vikings wherever we look. Buried beneath a quiet Massachusetts hillside lies a structure that defies easy explanation. The Upton Chamber is a perfect beehive of stone, a subterranean room built with such skill that its walls have held for centuries. You enter by crawling through a narrow, low tunnel that opens suddenly into a domed space, cool and dark and silent. The construction is uncanny, with each stone meticulously placed to form a seamless, arched ceiling without any mortar. For those searching for the lost Norse, this chamber feels hauntingly familiar. Across the Atlantic, in Scandinavia and the Celtic lands, you can find almost identical structures known as souterrains. These were underground passages and rooms, often built by the Norse for cold storage, as temporary refuge from raiders or for ritual purposes. The Upton Chamber is a near-perfect mirror of those ancient designs, a form that seems to have been transplanted directly from the Old World. Yet the story is not so simple. The chamber sits on land with a deep indigenous history, and many archaeologists argue it is a magnificent example of Native American stonework, perhaps a ceremonial sweat lodge or a sacred meeting place. They point to the lack of any definitive Norse artifacts found within or around the structure. Its true origins are a ghost in the historical record, a puzzle with 2 compelling but entirely separate solutions. This single stone room embodies the core challenge of the entire search. All along the eastern seaboard, from New England down to the Carolinas, there are anomalous stone structures, strange carvings, and odd earthworks that do not fit neatly into our established timelines. Each one is a question mark. Are we looking at the scattered, forgotten outposts of a transatlantic culture, or are we witnessing the incredible diversity and ingenuity of pre-Columbian native engineering, forms that sometimes converged on similar solutions by pure chance? The Upton Chamber does not give up its secret. It simply sits in the darkness, a silent testament to the many mysteries still buried in the American soil, waiting for a key we have not yet found. The Upton Chamber stands as a silent question, but in the soil of a coastal Native American village, a single, undeniable answer once surfaced. At the Goddard site in Maine, archaeologists sifting through layers of ancient shell and bone uncovered something that did not belong. It was a small, worn silver coin, a Norwegian penny minted during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre between 1067 and 1093. This was not a questionable runestone or a debated stone tower. This was a genuine artifact struck in a Norse mint over 4,000 miles away, and it was found in a context dated to the 12th or 13th century. The Maine Penny is the one real physical object that proves some form of contact occurred. The question is not if it arrived, but how. Did a Norse explorer himself hand this coin to a Penobscot ancestor on that very shore, a token of trade or a gift between two cultures meeting for the first time? Or does its journey tell a more complex story? The coin could have traveled for generations through vast indigenous trade networks that stretched from the Canadian Arctic down the Atlantic coast. A Norse object acquired in a brief encounter in Newfoundland or Labrador could have been passed from hand to hand, from tribe to tribe, as a rare and fascinating curiosity, moving slowly south over a century until it finally came to rest in Maine. This tiny piece of silver holds two very different histories within its worn surface. One is a story of direct face-to-face meeting, a fleeting moment of cross-cultural contact that history failed to record. The other is a testament to the incredible reach and complexity of Native American trade routes, capable of moving an object across a continent long before European colonization. The Maine Penny does not solve the mystery of the lost settlements. Instead, it deepens it, proving that the worlds of the Norse and the First Peoples were connected, even if that connection was made through a long, invisible chain of hands. Far to the north, beyond the Gulf of St. Lawrence, lies a far more formidable and ice-choked passage. The theory of a Hudson Bay voyage pushes the limits of Norse seamanship to the absolute extreme. Imagine their sturdy cargo ships designed for the open Atlantic, now navigating a labyrinth of floating sea ice. The journey would have been a desperate gamble driven by two powerful motives. The first was the pursuit of walrus. These immense marine mammals, with their valuable ivory tusks, were the economic lifeblood of the Greenland Norse, and their migratory herds would have drawn explorers ever farther north and west. The second, more tantalizing motive was the search for a passage. Norse sagas speak of a land that was rich, vast, and seemingly endless. Could they have believed that by pushing deep into this icy bay, they might find a route to its other side, a shortcut to even greater riches? The sheer audacity of such a journey is breathtaking, a testament to their incredible tolerance for risk and their relentless drive to see what lay beyond the next headland. This bold hypothesis finds a strange echo not in buried ruins, but in the living memory of the people who have always called this land home. The oral histories of the Inuit and Cree peoples contain stories that have been passed down for generations, narratives that some researchers listen to with a keen ear. These are not straightforward accounts of Vikings with horned helmets, but rather more subtle descriptions. They tell of encounters with strange people, often described as tall, with fair hair and light eyes, who arrived in large wooden boats. Some stories speak of trading, while others recount conflicts. These oral traditions, when carefully studied alongside the archaeology, form a field known as ethnohistory. It is a way of blending the scientific record with the cultural memory of First Nations, searching for points of convergence. A story about meeting foreigners who lived in houses of turf and worked with iron could be a 1,000-year-old memory of a real event, a fleeting contact between two worlds that was significant enough to be woven into the fabric of a people's history. These stories do not offer simple proof, but they add a profound human dimension to the archaeological puzzle. They suggest that the legacy of the Norse in North America may not be written only in stone and iron, but also preserved in the spoken word, a ghost of a conversation that happened long ago on a remote Arctic shore. The quiet hills of Massachusetts and the worn silver penny in Maine offer tangible clues, but the most explosive evidence for Vinland arrived not from the earth but from a library. In the 1950s, a stunning document surfaced, a medieval world map drawn on aged parchment. It depicted Europe, Africa, and Asia with the expected inaccuracies of its time. But in the far northwestern Atlantic, across a stretch of open ocean, it showed a large, distinct island labeled in Latin as Vinland. This was the Vinland map, and if it was genuine, it was nothing less than a medieval smoking gun, a chart that placed the Norse discovery of America firmly within the knowledge of the Old World centuries before Columbus. Its sudden appearance, tied to a mysterious and unclear provenance, immediately raised eyebrows. Yet when scientists first analyzed it, they found compelling reasons to believe. The parchment itself was radiocarbon dated to the 1400s, placing it squarely in the correct era. Initial studies of the ink suggested it was an iron gall formula, the standard type used by scribes in the Middle Ages. For a moment, it seemed the historical community had its proof, a map that corroborated the sagas from an independent European source. The map's lines seemed to trace not just geography, but a forgotten memory of a land the Norse had truly known. This initial validation, however, soon gave way to a storm of scientific doubt. When researchers analyzed the map's ink with more advanced tools, they made a startling discovery. Beneath the surface, the yellowed lines contained sharp, clear traces of a synthetic pigment called anatase. This particular form of titanium dioxide was not commercially produced until the 1920s. Its presence was a glaring anachronism, a modern fingerprint on a supposedly ancient document. The most logical conclusion was that a brilliant and patient forger had acquired a genuine, blank piece of medieval parchment. They then carefully created the entire map using a specially formulated ink designed to mimic the appearance of ancient iron gall, a deception sophisticated enough to pass the first rounds of scientific scrutiny. The motive for such an elaborate hoax could have been simple greed, aiming to create the ultimate collectible and sell it for a fortune. Yet a sliver of doubt remains for some. Could the anatase have come from a rare, natural medieval source, perhaps from sand that accidentally contaminated the ink? Or is the map a 20th century copy of a now lost genuine original? A theory that explains its startling accuracy but also its fatal chemical flaw. The Vinland map sits at the heart of this unresolved conflict. It is either one of the most clever forgeries ever created, a testament to human cunning, or it is a deeply flawed relic that somehow preserves a genuine, world-altering truth. Its enduring power lies in this very ambiguity, a captivating piece of the puzzle that refuses to be dismissed entirely, reminding us that sometimes the most compelling evidence is also the most untrustworthy. High on the windswept coast of Baffin Island, the Tanfield Valley site known as Nanawak holds some of the most compelling physical evidence for a Norse presence beyond Newfoundland. Here, archaeologists uncovered the outlines of stone structures that are startlingly familiar. The foundations do not resemble the circular tents of the indigenous Dorset people who inhabited this region. Instead, they form the distinct rectangular footprint of what could be a classic Norse longhouse, complete with a central hearth area and low stone walls that would have supported a turf roof. This was not just a temporary shelter. Its design speaks of a group settling in for a long, dark Arctic winter, building a home in a style they knew from Greenland and Iceland. But the building itself is only part of the story. Within the soil, researchers found artifacts that seemed to whisper of European hands. There were several whetstones used for sharpening blades, and analysis revealed traces of bronze and brass on their surfaces. These are metals the Dorset culture did not use. More tantalizing still were the fragile fragments of spun yarn, some of it woven from the fur of local Arctic animals like the muskox. This was not sinew or rawhide cordage. It was a true spun thread, a technology that, at this time in the Arctic, was unique to the Norse. For a moment, the picture seems clear, a small band of Vikings huddled in their stone and turf house on the edge of the known world, mending their clothes and sharpening their tools. Yet the scientific community is deeply divided over this very site. Skeptics offer a powerful counter-argument. They point out that the Dorset culture was incredibly sophisticated and adaptable. Their structures were diverse, and a rectangular foundation could easily be a variation of a Dorset communal house, not a Norse import. The metal traces on the whetstones could be contamination from later Inuit or even modern archaeologists. And the yarn, while unusual, could theoretically have been made by the Dorset using a technique that has simply not been preserved elsewhere in the archaeological record. The fundamental challenge at Tanfield Valley is one of material culture. In the harsh Arctic environment, organic materials like wood and cloth decay to nothing. What remains is stone, and stone tools can be notoriously difficult to attribute to one culture over another. We are left with a ghost of a settlement, its identity hovering between two possibilities. Is this the tangible footprint of a Norse hunting camp, a remote outpost for gathering walrus ivory and furs, or is it a magnificent example of Dorset innovation that we are only just beginning to understand? The stones at Nanook refuse to give a definitive answer, forcing us to live in the space between a thrilling discovery and a persistent, unanswered question. The sagas themselves whisper of a place even more elusive than Vinland, a land they called Hvitramanaland, the land of the white men. This was not just an empty coast to be claimed, but a territory already inhabited by people the Norse described as speaking a tongue like their own. The name itself is a riddle wrapped in a mystery. Were these white men a lost colony of Norse who had sailed west generations earlier, perhaps from Iceland or even Ireland, establishing their own society beyond the reach of kings and bishops? Or was this a case of mistaken identity, a description of a light-skinned indigenous people, or perhaps the sight of albino animals that fueled a legend around a distant campfire? The location is as vague as the people, described only as lying somewhere south of the main Vinland settlements. This has led theorists to point a finger at the rich, temperate lands of the St. Lawrence River Valley, a natural highway into the continent that would have been an obvious route for any explorers pushing deeper south. Here, the legend takes its most romantic turn. It suggests that these Norse travelers did not just visit, they stayed. They built a settlement, intermarried with local tribes, and slowly faded into the fabric of a new world, their European origins blurring over the generations until only the story remained. This is the vision of a Norse Atlantis, not a city sunk beneath the waves, but a culture assimilated into the land, leaving behind no runestones, only its genetic and cultural ghost in the stories of the First Nations. For centuries, this tantalizing legend has acted as a siren call for explorers and amateur archaeologists, a permanent invitation to search for the one settlement that did not vanish, but simply changed its name and melted into the American wilderness. It is the ultimate expression of the mystery, a story that promises not just ruins but living descendants. The rugged coastline of Narragansett Bay offered a perfect sanctuary from the punishing Atlantic. Mount Hope Bay, a deep and sheltered inlet branching off from these waters, would have been a welcome sight for any Norse captain. Its geography is a natural harbor, protected on nearly all sides by forested hills, with calm, deep waters ideal for dragging their shallow draft longships onto a beach. This was more than just a scenic cove, it was a strategic layover point, a place to rest a weary crew, gather fresh water, and make repairs before pushing farther south or beginning the long voyage back north. A temporary camp here makes perfect logical sense, a hidden way station on the edge of a new world, yet the evidence for such a stopover remains ghostly. Local lore and some independent researchers have pointed to strange, large stones with worn holes found along the shore, suggesting they could be mooring stones. Others note the occasional discovery of iron rivets of a style that predates known colonial settlements, though these finds are often isolated and their context lost to time. The true story of Mount Hope Bay may not be written in undisputed ruins, but in the sheer, compelling logic of its geography, a silent argument for why the Norse would have come here, even if all physical proof has long since vanished or lies still undiscovered. Further south, the complex shoreline of Long Island Sound presents its own set of riddles. The Mystic River area, with its deep, navigable channel and protected coves, would have been another obvious landing site. Here, the whispers of a Norse presence take a different form, rooted not just in geography but in puzzling artifacts and names. For generations, stories have circulated about certain stone structures found in the woodlands, formations that do not easily fit the pattern of colonial farm walls or Native American ceremonial sites. More controversially, some have looked to the region's oldest place names, those passed down through indigenous oral tradition, searching for linguistic clues that might hint at a much older encounter. Could a name, its original meaning now lost, preserve the memory of a meeting with fair-haired strangers? The most tantalizing and heavily debated artifacts are a handful of objects occasionally pulled from the soil or found in old private collections. Items like a weighted spindle whorl or a decorated bone comb that, to some eyes, bear a striking resemblance to Norse domestic tools. The academic response to these finds is typically one of deep skepticism. Without a clear archaeological context, an artifact is just a curious object. It could be a hoax, a misidentified colonial item, or even a genuine prehistoric Native American object that simply resembles European designs by pure chance. The place names can often be explained through a deeper understanding of Algonquian languages, leaving no need for a Norse explanation. This constant back and forth between tantalizing possibility and sobering scrutiny defines the search all along the eastern seaboard. We are left to wonder if we are looking at the faded echoes of numerous brief landings, of crews who came, rested, and left without leaving a lasting mark, or if we are simply seeing the patterns we so desperately want to see in a landscape rich with its own long and complex history. Far to the south, in the wooded hills of Oklahoma, a massive slab of stone stands as a geographical impossibility. The Heavener runestone is a towering presence, 12 feet high and covered in 8 deeply carved symbols arranged in a single, stark column. These are not ambiguous scratches, but clear, confident runes from an ancient alphabet. The immediate question is as simple as it is profound. How did a message written in a Scandinavian script find its way to the American heartland, over 1,000 miles from the nearest saltwater? The translations offered for these 8 characters only deepen the mystery. One interpretation reads the runes as a name, Glomedal, which translates to Glom's Valley, suggesting this was a territorial claim, a marker meant to declare this land belonged to a Norse explorer named Glom. Another compelling theory argues the inscription is not a name but a date, a specific day on the medieval Norse calendar corresponding to November 11, 1012. This would turn the stone from a simple marker into a historical monument, a way for travelers to record their presence for posterity. The most practical explanation is that it served as a navigational aid, a fixed point of reference for a group that intended to return. Yet each of these explanations crashes against the sheer scale of the continent. For a Norse party to have reached this spot, they would have had to abandon their ship and undertake an epic overland trek of staggering difficulty. This has led to a radical, almost cinematic theory. Could they have sailed their shallow draft not along the coast, but down the vast inland waterway of the Mississippi River system? Imagine a longship, its square sail lowered, being rowed up the wide, muddy currents of the Mississippi, then navigating the smaller, winding channels of the Arkansas River, pushing ever deeper into a continent no European was supposed to see for another 500 years. It is a journey that seems to border on fantasy, yet the stone itself is undeniably real. The debate over its authenticity is a fierce one. Skeptics point to the lack of any supporting artifacts in the region and the possibility of a modern hoax, perhaps carved by a Scandinavian immigrant in the 19th century. Yet geological analysis shows a deep, ancient weathering within the carved channels, suggesting the inscription is centuries old. the Heavener runestone forces a difficult choice. Do we dismiss it because its existence defies our entire understanding of history, or do we accept that it might be proof of a journey so bold, so audacious, that we are only now beginning to grasp its full implications? Deep within a dark Kentucky cave system, a flickering lantern might cast shadows that look like letters on the damp limestone walls. This is the heart of the mystery surrounding the Shawnee Cave inscriptions. Initial reports described clear, ancient runes carved into the rock, a message left by Norse explorers who had somehow journeyed hundreds of miles inland. The very idea sent a ripple of excitement through those who believed in a vast Viking presence in North America. Here was potential proof, not on a portable stone but fixed permanently to the landscape. Yet when professional runologists, experts in these ancient alphabets, were brought in to examine the markings, their verdict was a splash of cold water. The so-called runes were not a coherent message at all. They were a collection of random marks, some likely caused by natural erosion, others probably the work of 19th century tourists leaving their own informal graffiti. A few of the shapes bore a faint, superficial resemblance to indigenous petroglyphs, symbols carved by Native Americans long before any European contact. This case perfectly illustrates a powerful psychological phenomenon that haunts the entire search for lost Viking settlements, a trick of the mind known as pareidolia. This is our brain's innate tendency to find meaningful patterns, especially familiar ones like human faces or written letters, in random stimuli. We see a man in the moon, a face in the swirls of wood grain, and yes, we see runes in the natural cracks and weathering of a cave wall. It is not a sign of foolishness, but a fundamental part of how human perception works. In the dim, echoing silence of a place like Shawnee Cave, with the hope of discovery fueling the imagination, the urge to connect those random marks into a story becomes almost overwhelming. This powerful human impulse is the very reason why the scientific process demands such rigorous, repeatable proof. It is the necessary counterbalance to our desire to find what we are looking for, a reminder that every potential clue must be weighed not just with hope, but with a disciplined and skeptical eye. Another mysterious stone emerged from the soil of Rhode Island. In the 1930s, a man walking his property in the Narragansett Bay area noticed a large, flat stone partly buried near a stone wall. Its surface was covered in strange, angular markings that did not look like any writing he knew. When local historians were brought in, the excitement began to build. The markings were identified as runes, and a translation was proposed that spoke of a group of Norsemen, a message of ownership and presence. It seemed like undeniable proof, a direct echo of the sagas found right there in New England. The stone was quickly hailed by some as the long-sought evidence of a Viking camp in the region, a physical companion to the stories of Mount Hope Bay. Yet the academic world responded with deep and immediate skepticism. Experts in Norse linguistics pointed out critical flaws. The runes were a confusing mix from different time periods and alphabets, a jumble that no genuine Viking Age carver would ever use. The grammar and phrasing were off, containing modern Scandinavian elements that betrayed a 19th century hand rather than a medieval one. The prevailing theory is that this stone was not a relic of exploration, but a piece of folk art, likely carved by a homesick Scandinavian immigrant. In the 1800s, there was a wave of such immigrants to New England, many of whom worked as stonemasons. Carving a runestone could have been a way to connect with their heritage, to leave a personal mark on their new land, perhaps without any intention to deceive, but simply to express their own story. Despite this logical explanation, the Narragansett runestone continues to hold power for a community of dedicated enthusiasts. They argue that the academic dismissal is too quick, that the stone's placement and weathering suggest a much greater age. For them, it remains a tangible clue, a piece of a puzzle that the established history is unwilling to accept. This stone, like so many others, exists in a space between two worlds. It is either a beautiful piece of immigrant history, a personal monument to a new beginning, or it is a genuine artifact that challenges our entire timeline. Its true story is carved not just in the rock, but in our enduring desire to find a connection to a past that is just out of reach. Etched into a slab of glacial rock in Massachusetts rests the ghost of a warrior. The Westford Knight carving is a life-sized figure, its form defined not by a continuous line but by a series of precise, drilled holes punched into the stone. From a distance, the pattern resolves into the image of a medieval knight, one hand gripping the pommel of a long sword, the other holding a shield emblazoned with what some interpret as a heraldic galley, a type of ship. This is not a simple scratch or a random collection of marks. The figure has a startling presence, a deliberate quality that suggests a skilled hand was commemorating a person of great importance. The story that has grown around this carving is a dramatic one, tying it directly to the legend of Henry Sinclair, a Scottish nobleman who, some believe, led a pre-Columbus expedition to North America in the late 14th century. According to this theory, one of his knights died here, and this intricate punch-hole effigy was carved as a lasting memorial, a piece of European chivalry left in the New England woods. But does the rock itself tell the same story? Geologists and mainstream archaeologists offer a very different interpretation. They point out that the rock is a complex tapestry of natural features. Deep glacial scratches run across its surface, and some of these natural fissures happen to align in ways that could suggest a human form to a hopeful eye. The so-called sword could be a particularly deep and straight glacial groove. More importantly, the drilled holes themselves, known as cupules, are a well-documented form of Native American rock art found all across the continent. For indigenous cultures, these carefully pecked holes often held deep spiritual or ceremonial significance, marking sacred spaces or serving as star charts. The official archaeological view is that the Westford Knight is a powerful example of pareidolia, where we see a knight because we are looking for one, superimposed over a genuine Native American ceremonial site. The figure we perceive is, in this view, a chance arrangement of ancient cupules and natural fractures that our pattern-seeking brains have assembled into a familiar shape. The debate often centers on the tool that created the holes. Proponents of the knight theory argue that the precision and depth of the drilling required a specific type of punch and hammer technology consistent with medieval European metalworking. They see the clear outline of a shield and a distinct, stylized sword of a type used in the 14th century. Skeptics counter that the indigenous peoples of the region had the technology to create identical cupules using hardened stone tools, and that the heraldic symbol on the shield is too ambiguous to be a definitive identifier. The truth is that the carving exists in a frustrating middle ground. It is clearly a man-made artifact, but its true age and purpose are locked in the stone. Is it a poignant gravestone for a lost Scottish knight, evidence of an expedition history forgot? Or is it a sacred indigenous site, its original meaning lost that we have reinterpreted through a European lens? The Westford Knight does not give up its secret, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that a single set of marks can hold two completely different and equally compelling histories. The final lost settlement takes us to the very edge of the map, to the vast, windswept shores of Ungava Bay in northern Quebec. This sprawling, ice-choked bay is not a random guess. Its location is a matter of pure geographical logic. For any Norse ship sailing west from their Greenland settlements, Ungava Bay is the first major landfall, a massive indentation in the coastline that would have been impossible to miss. The sailing route is almost a straight line, a direct shot across the Davis Strait, making it one of the most probable destinations for any expedition pushed off course or simply driven to see what lay on the western horizon. The bay itself would have presented a landscape both familiar and forbidding. Its dramatic tides are among the highest in the world, exposing vast mudflats that would have been rich with shellfish and other marine life, a potential source of food. More importantly, the bay's shores are the summer haul-out grounds for enormous walrus herds. For the Norse, a walrus was a treasure chest on flippers, its ivory tusks more valuable than gold back in European markets. The economic incentive to establish a seasonal hunting camp here would have been overwhelming, a chance to harvest a fortune from the edge of the world. Yet this very logic is met with an immense and challenging reality. The Ungava Peninsula is one of the most remote and inhospitable regions in North America, a treeless Arctic desert where the ground is permanently frozen and the winter cold is beyond brutal. Organized archaeological surveys here have been few and far between, limited by the extreme cost and difficulty of mounting an expedition. The few investigations that have occurred have turned up no definitive proof, no longhouse ruins or Norse artifacts lying in the open. The terrain itself works against discovery, with fierce winds scouring the landscape and active permafrost constantly churning the soil, potentially burying or destroying subtle evidence over the centuries. The true potential of Ungava Bay lies not in what has been found, but in what remains hidden. Its sheer size and remoteness mean that vast stretches of its coastline have never been walked by an archaeologist's boots. A small, turf-walled structure could easily be sleeping beneath a thin layer of tundra, waiting for a satellite's eye or a determined ground team to finally reveal its secret. This final sight brings our journey full circle, ending not with an answer but with an invitation. The story of the 25 lost settlements closes on a note of pure, uncharted possibility, a reminder that some of the greatest discoveries in the saga of the Norse in America may still be out there, frozen in time under the vast, silent sky of the far north. Their footholds in the New World vanished as silently as they appeared. The enduring mystery is not just where these settlements were, but why they failed to last. A perfect storm of environmental pressure, cultural conflict, and sheer logistical overreach ultimately sealed their fate. The first and most relentless force was a shifting climate. Just as the Norse were establishing their most remote outposts, the planet began to cool. The Little Ice Age was gradually descending, its icy grip making the northern latitudes increasingly unforgiving. In Greenland, the growing seasons shortened and sea ice expanded, blocking the vital shipping lanes back to Iceland and Europe. The very routes that connected them to the wider Norse world were now choked with impassable barriers for more and more of the year. A voyage from Greenland to the timber-rich shores of Markland, once a challenging but manageable journey, became a deadly gamble against the ice. The climate was not just an inconvenience, it was a slowly tightening noose around their remote communities. Then there were the people they found already living in this new land, the Skraelings of the sagas. These encounters, as recorded in the Viking narratives, were often fraught with tension and violence. The Norse were explorers, but they were also settlers accustomed to claiming land. This put them on a direct collision course with powerful indigenous nations who had their own territories, their own complex societies, and no intention of surrendering their home. The sagas tell of trade, but they also tell of terrifying battles where the Norse, for all their weaponry and armor, were frequently outmatched by the sheer numbers and guerrilla tactics of the native peoples. Every potential settlement site was already someone else's homeland, and defending a small, isolated beachhead against a determined local population was a losing proposition. Imagine the scene from the Viking perspective. You are part of a small crew, perhaps 30 men, camped on a strange shore. From the tree line, you watch dozens, then hundreds of skilled warriors emerge. Your longships are your only escape, and the open ocean is a terrifying wilderness. The strategic reality was brutally clear. They were hopelessly outnumbered and impossibly far from any hope of reinforcement. Beyond the environmental and human challenges lay an even more fundamental problem: logistics. Maintaining a permanent colony across the Atlantic was an economic nightmare. Sending ships from Greenland, itself a fragile community, to supply a distant outpost required a level of coordination and resources that simply did not exist. What if a supply ship was lost in a storm? What if a key craftsman died with no one to replace him? The chain of survival was stretched to its absolute breaking point. And for what reward? This may be the most profound reason of all. After the initial excitement of discovery, the Norse may have looked at the vast forests of North America and asked a simple, practical question: what does this land truly offer that we cannot get elsewhere? Iceland and Greenland already provided ample pasture for their sheep and cattle. Walrus ivory, their main cash crop, was abundant in the northern hunting grounds they already controlled. While the timber was valuable, it was not valuable enough to justify the immense cost and danger of establishing and defending permanent colonies in a hostile land. North America was a treasure chest, but the key to unlocking it was missing. There was no economic engine, no compelling reason to pour their limited population and resources into a continent that, for all its size, offered more risk than reward. The settlements did not vanish in a single cataclysm. They were simply abandoned one by one as the Greenlanders turned inward, focused on their own survival, and the memory of Vinland faded into a half-remembered saga told by the fire. The same tools that map distant planets are now turning their gaze on our own soil, scanning the coastlines and forests of North America for ghosts. LiDAR technology pierces the dense canopy of a New England forest, stripping away centuries of growth with invisible laser pulses. From the air, it reveals the land as it was, laying bare the subtle contours of the earth. What looks like an ordinary hill to the human eye becomes, under LiDAR scrutiny, the distinct geometric footprint of a long-buried foundation. This is how we might finally find the overgrown ruins of a Norse shelter, a structure so consumed by time and forest that it has become part of the landscape itself. Meanwhile, ground-penetrating radar acts like an X-ray for history, sending radio waves deep into the earth and listening for their echo. Without a single shovel breaking ground, it can map entire fields, revealing the ghostly outlines of ancient hearths, storage pits, and post holes hidden just beneath the surface. It is the ultimate non-invasive tool, allowing archaeologists to see into the past without disturbing a single grain of soil. These technologies are transforming the search from a hopeful guess into a precise science, turning vast, uncharted wildernesses into grids of data ripe for discovery. From even higher up, the relentless eyes of satellites are scanning thousands of miles of coastline, searching for the spectral signatures of lost settlements. They can detect minute changes in vegetation health or soil composition that betray the presence of something man-made below. A patch of grass that grows slightly greener might be drawing nutrients from the rich, organic decay of a turf longhouse buried for 1,000 years. These are the subtle clues we could never see from the ground, the whispers of history written in the very color of the land. Beyond mapping what is there, new methods of analysis are finally giving voices to the artifacts we already have. Sediment analysis can read the soil like a history book, identifying microscopic particles of charcoal from specific types of fires, or traces of pollen that tell us exactly what plants were growing in a given century. This could definitively prove whether a hearth was used for Norse bog iron production or for a simple indigenous cooking fire. Advanced dating techniques are becoming more refined, capable of pinpointing the age of organic materials with astonishing accuracy. A piece of wood, a fragment of cloth, or even the crust left on a piece of iron could now be dated to within a few decades, finally providing the chronological proof needed to settle debates over sites like Point Rosee or the structures in Tanfield Valley. We are no longer relying solely on what we can see with our eyes or hold in our hands. The future of this mystery lies in reading the invisible signals, in decoding the faint chemical and physical fingerprints left behind by those who stood on these shores a millennium ago. The next great discovery might not be a runestone unearthed by a farmer's plow, but a digital signal from a satellite, a magnetic anomaly on a radar screen, or a unique pollen grain trapped in a layer of ancient mud. The silent stones are beginning to speak, and we are only just learning how to listen. Our journey across a continent has taken us from a single, wind-scoured cove in Newfoundland to the very heart of the American Midwest. We have stood in the shadow of the Newport Tower and traced the cryptic runes of the Kensington stone. We have weighed the sober evidence of the Maine Penny against the wild possibilities of the Heavener runestone. This is not a simple story with a clear ending. It is a sprawling tapestry woven from threads of hard science, romantic legend, and enduring mystery. The search for these 25 lost sites is far more than an academic treasure hunt for ruined walls and rusted iron. It is a profound re-examination of the human story of the Americas, a challenge to the timeline we thought we knew. What if the peopling of this vast land was not a single event, but a series of separate, fleeting contacts of cultures meeting and then parting, their stories fading into myth? Every potential site, from the stone chambers of New England to the possible mooring stones of the Great Lakes, forces us to ask bigger questions about who got here, when, and what their presence truly meant. This mystery is still alive, evolving with every pass of a ground-penetrating radar unit and every new analysis of a weathered artifact. The map is not yet complete. So we turn to you. What forgotten stories linger in your own part of the world? Have you heard a local legend of fair-haired strangers or stumbled upon a strange arrangement of stones that does not quite fit the official history? Share your thoughts and discoveries in the comments below. The next great clue in this 1,000-year-old mystery might be waiting just beneath your feet. And if you are captivated by history's greatest enigmas, subscribe now. Our next deep dive into the forgotten past is already waiting.